So good evening everyone, and welcome to our Lovely People webinar. So this week we have the lovely Jennny Anderson joining us. She is our lovely person, and I think she kind of fits the bill very nicely. So Jennny, you and I have known you for quite a while. You've sort of been on my radar. We've had a few chats over the time. But would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and maybe your principal's journey or whatever occurs to you to share?
Thank you for asking me to be part of your webinars. So I've been around the principals now since 2005, and I'm sorry for people that have heard this a million times. Sometimes get bored of my own story, but I do think there's a relevance to it, and I hope that as I see more about the principals, actually the way I tell my story changes, because I'm still seeing things about what happened in a different way. But I came to it at a time where I felt incredibly limited in what was going to be possible for my life, and struggled a lot with anxiety, depression. I'd had eating disorders on and off over 10 years. Didn't really think much was possible for me in my life. And after attending a 3-day training in London, it feels like all of these ideas of who I thought I was and my self-image and what was important in life, like everything that I thought I knew was kind of drawn into question as, where do I think all of that stuff exists? Is it factual? And I think I got to see it for what it was. So this character that I had carried around as like a heavy weight, suddenly I saw what that was built from and made from. It's almost like the building blocks of reality were like revealed in that moment, that who I thought I was a creation. You know, it wasn't a fixed thing. It was a creation from this incredible power of thought, and that at any moment we can have new thought and a new experience. And looking back, I can see that throughout my life up until that point, I'd been in and out of all kinds of experiences. I'd had all kinds of feelings, but I just identified with certain ones as being me. And they were the ones that were very tricky and limited, and felt like they kind of almost suffocated me. And really looking back, I felt like it just night and day changed. And my family found it quite hard initially because they thought I'd joined a cult or was taking drugs. But now, like, I look back, and actually the freedom I'd found then, still when I look back, it still seems limited, because there was no way I would be doing webinars or that kind of thing. But it was the relief for the little I had seen was life-changing. From going from somebody who found it incredibly difficult to speak to people outside of my immediate family, and even with friends, I found it very hard to be myself. There was always like this trying to fit in and needing alcohol to kind of be able to socialize in bigger groups, to being someone that just felt a lot more comfortable when they're quiet, and seeing that some of the time I'd been calling myself shy and insecure, actually I was just feeling quiet and I didn't want to join in. So getting more comfortable with that. But it's been a constant kind of game of, wow, this is so simple, and the ease that can come from that. And then getting totally lost in thought again and feeling like I've forgotten everything. But it's been an incredible learning, because you keep seeing that what we then get to share with people is you see how deceptive it is. You see how easy it is to get caught up, and you can be learning this for 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years, and I think we're still going to have the human experience of it looks like something other than thought creating our feeling. And I think there's like a gentleness and a humility built into that system, because my levels of compassion and understanding for other people have gone up and up and up as I've seen this more and more. So I think I feel like this is one of the most hopeful things for humanity. And like listening to you say you're going into schools and sharing this with young people. We've just come back from London, where we've done the iHeart training, because I was fascinated to know how to take this into schools. And we've kind of done a little bit of stuff with youth in South Africa and Nepal, but we were interested to see what does it look like to have a curriculum, and how would I work with a curriculum. It feels like there's so much momentum at the moment with young people and well-being and mental health. So it feels like a privilege really to be involved with it at this time, because I do feel at some stage we'll look back and think, how did we not all know this? Why wasn't this a curriculum in every school? But since coming across the principles, me and my ex-husband Rudy created the Three Principles movie site, which is just full of testimonials and transformational stories. So I've got to travel the world and see and share this in completely different settings with people of all ages, ethnicities, backgrounds. And I think it's been an incredible learning, because it's like you see the proof of what you're sharing every time you witness transformation, and you witness people, oh, even there this is true. And you don't realise that, you'll say this is true for everyone, but you're kind of like. And then myself and Dave have just been out in South Africa and with Freedom Thinking, and got to do work with some disabled refugees. And the first day we both felt like, wow, this audience is probably the audience that seems to have had the most circumstantial, traumatic stuff happen in their lives. And I had to explain to them what an eating disorder was. And it was interesting for me to tell these people who at different times had found it almost impossible to find food for their families, that this is something that I used to do. But they didn't seem to show any judgment. They just saw, wow, you really suffered to have done that to yourself. And they were just such kind, resilient, open people. And they were open to learning and hearing about resilience. And we just could say to them on that first day, the fact you guys are all here and how kind you all are to us and to one another is proof of what we're pointing to. That inbuilt into the human being and inbuilt into all life is the capacity to bounce back and overcome and not be a victim of life. Like we've got something within us that can't be broken, and you're all testament to that. But it was an incredible time to realize the truth in what we are sharing, and the hope in what we are sharing, and that it isn't limited to any kind of person or group of people. It really is this universal truth that can be shared in any setting. So I think I've loved being able to keep sharing with people, but I know that every time I do, I then gain so much from what they've seen and the way they show up in life. Like, you realise there's just a group of teachers in the room and a group of students in the room, and more realising, I'm not an expert in this by any means. Like, we're all in life together, but I do know that the little I've seen has completely transformed my life and made so much possible that seemed impossible. And that is there for every single being on this planet. So I think it's one of the most hopeful teachings that I've ever come across. And it's so practical, but it's also connecting us with that place which some people may call God. And if you're not religious, you might think it's energy or spirit or soul. And I think that to me is beyond the words, beyond the stories, beyond the teaching. Like, there's something that resonates in us with that. So I think it goes, it crosses language barriers and all those things, because it's something true that's already there. We're just like pointing to what's already there. So I think I think my life, I don't know where I would be had I not come across this, but I know that I could get very, very low and not want to be here anymore. So I know that my partner Dave often said, this saved his life. And I think in so many ways it saved my life. Whether that be just that I've got to have such a beautiful life since coming across it, or whether it literally saved it, I don't know. But I'm forever grateful for sort of stumbling across this group in London. There's like 30 people that had kind of been scraped together and had no idea the relevance of it. You know, we had Dr. Roger Mills, who's this incredible community psychologist who travelled around America doing amazing work and community projects, and we couldn't get anyone along. Like, people weren't interested. But I'm so glad I went along, because his stories and his understanding and his absolute knowing that every single being has got potential within them. It just needs to be pointed out, and you need to speak to that. Like, he saw that we'd been speaking to mental illness and mental dis-ease and not speaking to that potential within people. And I know for myself, just having him see me as a whole human being, not broken, not interested in my story of who I thought I was, in a really respectful way, that spoke so much to me. Even more than the understanding, just somebody looking at me and knowing, like they know that I'm whole, like that did something for me. So I think it's incredible to start to see that we are not a victim of circumstance or the past, that moment to moment we're in a thought created experience, but beyond that, to know that regardless of the experience, we're all right, and we're built to take it. And there's learning and information in all of it, and without so much judgment, I feel like we get to be present with different feelings, and there's information there, there's knowledge, and that's a privilege. Being alive is a privilege. And I was speaking to someone, a 19-year-old today, and I said to her, if you told me that when I was like 18, 19, I'm like, being alive is not a privilege. I hate it. It's not bearable. But more and more, like, it's a privilege. And it's a miracle. It really is a miracle that we're here. And I've loved having Dave point so much stuff out in nature to me, because I don't know where I used to look, because I didn't see any of those things. Like, I didn't notice different birds. I didn't notice, like, he took me to see a murmuration. So where the starlings all just meet before bedtime, like at dusk, and move together in ways and it's like moving as one. And I'm like, I'd never noticed stuff like that, really. Like, I was so absorbed, really, still in the principles of, like, how am I doing? Have I had an insight? Still self-focused. And I feel like I've had another kind of evolution over the last 3 years of, like, it's when we're not thinking about ourselves, we see what is here. We see what's present. And you know, there's a time and a place for self-reflection. And I'm not saying don't do it, but realizing how even learning the principles kind of became something for me to think about myself with and monitor myself with. How am I doing? What am I seeing? What's my teaching like? How impactful was I? And all those things. But it feels like it's in the absence of doing all of that stuff, that place, that well-being, that essence shows itself. It's there. And I hadn't realized that still I was kind of getting in the way of that so much of the time by kind of judging my experience or kind of ruminating on things. And it would have been one of the things I said in courses, you know, there's no need, you don't have to keep looking back and ruminating. But I thought it was in a positive direction, because it was about my insights and it was about my understanding, but it was still self-focus. And like this week, I just realized, like, this idea of self-conscious, it's like conscious of self, and we suffer that. And I hadn't realized how much of the suffering is like focus on self. It's innocent. It was in, you know, a worthy pursuit, but it still creates this disease, this uncomfortableness. And it isn't as necessary as we've made it, because life will just live us. It's what we're born to be. It's not what we're born for. And it's working and living everything so beautifully, perfectly. But we just have this sense that we need to be more than, we need to be different from. It's always, you know, looking to the future, and it's like, but it's here. So I feel like my understanding of the principles has shifted and changed so much in the time that I've been around it. And I've loved keeping my learning going and listening to other people. And one of the beautiful things that one of the guys from the refugee centre who just was blown away by this, and you can watch his video, I can send a link afterwards, a guy called Godel, and we've kept up conversation with him, and he, on the last call, he said he's been looking back at all of these philosophers and theosophers, and he's looking for the commonality. Because I think sometimes people kind of come across the principles and almost want to disprove it, where he's gone away so touched by it to find throughout history, where have people been pointing us to this? And he said he's finding so much, so many quotes, so many stories that he's heard before and studied, but never really heard. And he said it's like he's suddenly got like the eyes for this truth, and he's finding it. And I do feel that's what the principles offers us, like to have eyes for what's true. And then we start to see it and feel it in everyday life.
Lovely, thank you.
I don't even know if I answered your question.
It's perfect, absolutely perfect. And I love the everyday normalness of it. When you talked about it saving your life and changing things, and how you see things differently now. I mean, we are blessed to live in a beautiful part of the country. We live in North Devon by the sea, and the kind of thing we've sort of, just the little title we've given ourselves, we've kind of said, we're going to make North Devon the most mentally healthy place to live and work. And when you talk to people, they all kind of say, oh gosh, it's so beautiful here, and yet so many people struggle and suffer and miss that amazing beauty. And this morning, actually, when I was driving to the school, I have no idea what it is, and I don't know anything about birds, but for the first time ever, I noticed there was just like a V full of birds just flying, and I wanted to take a picture, but I was driving, but I just watched them drive. And yeah, it is beautiful when we kind of take a breath and stop and see stuff. So we often have people who are very new to this understanding, that I send the replays to some of these videos and what have you, and sometimes they jump on with us. So I know you've kind of touched on what it is and alluded to what it is we're talking about, but if you were completely new to this and you're kind of, I can remember going, yeah, but what are you talking about? Will you be a bit more specific? And I know it's a little bit difficult, and it's the question when anybody comes on this, they go, oh, you're going to ask me that, aren't you? But if there was somebody new, like when you go out to these places, if you're talking to somebody who doesn't really know what it is you're talking about, what would you say to somebody quite new to this?
Yeah, well, I always do dread that question.
Everybody does. I love asking. I like being this side of it. I'm glad I'm not that side. I love hearing people's answers.
One of the things that really struck me with this is teaching it in Russia and having a translator, and them needing to use 2 words to describe consciousness. And the reason I find that funny is because the principles are this beautiful metaphor, this beautiful description that we have, that's, within the English language, there's 3 words that are beautifully describing how life is working. But it really eased it up a bit for me in Russia, when I was like, wow, they need 2 words to describe this, so don't get too hung up on the words. And the fact that they are like these descriptive words, like I spoke about the power of thought, and we so easily will say, oh, okay, I understand that, I know what thought is. But when within the principles we're speaking about the power of thought, we're talking about the fact of thought, the fact that we're able to have an experience, this power that creates. So it's not what it's created or what we're thinking, but it's the fact that we're able to think. And then we speak about consciousness as our ability to be aware of what we think, our ability to be able to acknowledge existence. But consciousness as a principle applies just as much to us as it does to anything else in nature. It's a constant within everything. And mind is described as the intelligence or the knowledge or the energy behind the universe. that without we wouldn't have any life. And that there are three ways of describing what's happening moment to moment to moment. And it's a way of describing how life does work as opposed to how it doesn't work. And I think I've liked using it in that way because it seems, especially with the kids actually, because they're really interested in that. Like they find it hard sometimes to get their head around this idea of three principles. Like you try and intellectually understand that, it doesn't really do anything for you. But they are universal fundamental principles because they apply to all. There is no being on this earth that doesn't have the power of thought, the power of consciousness, and an energy making them alive. And in that we are the same. And the more that we start to see that, the more we start to recognize, well, the experience we live in is a creation within our own mind, that we cannot know reality without these principles. Because reality is created within us, which is why we all live in different worlds. Like we cannot experience one another's reality because it's an impossibility, because we all think differently. But we use these mediums to create realities. So in that we're the same. And to know that you can have one thing happen in the world and have 10 different responses to that one thing starts to show what we're talking about, in that no people will experience it the same. It's impossible. And I hadn't really questioned that before I came across the principles. It was like, well, I remember how it actually happened. They're all totally wrong. Or, you know, we have this idea that our reality is the right one. So then we try and force other people into believing it. We argue, we disagree. But this really shows us that we're all creating reality in the same way. But the reality we create is so individual and different. And I think we stop fearing life and others and difference when we start to see that. It doesn't become wrong. So I feel like it's descriptive of what's happening, and the more we see that, everything that isn't true starts to fall away. I'm drinking nettle tea and I'm sure it's actually making me cough more. It's drying my throat rather than giving it. The reason I think we find it hard sometimes to say, what are the principles, is because they are descriptive words to describe formless powers. And we're used to seeing things in the form and understanding them and being able to break them down. Whereas these are just formless powers that existed before us, that created a universe that runs through everything. So in a way, we don't need to understand those. But what we do start to see is, as they are constants, how do they show up for us? What does that mean for us? So we start to see, or we speak a lot about, there's nothing to do with these principles, but don't confuse that with do nothing. It's something Dave and I have been talking to people a lot about recently, because it's like, oh, I understand that I'm living in a thought created reality. I just need to sit here now and wait for it to pass. People can often think that we're belittling maybe their experience or their suffering by saying that it's thought. And I remember teaching on a retreat and people kept saying, well, if you know it's just thought, and it just occurred to me, I said, it's not just thought, it's all thought. It's all thought. But that's no small thing. That isn't belittling in any way. It's the only way we get to experience life. So from our most beautiful feeling to our most awful feeling, that's come from this power of thought, consciousness creating. So as we see that and have an appreciation for it within ourselves, we see it and appreciate it in others. So I think our levels of understanding rise. Compassion, gratitude, all these things that we know are good ideas are byproducts. Because we cannot then blame outside for how we feel. We can, but it's not. Someone said to me recently, oh, I know I shouldn't blame other people. And I was like, well, it's not that you shouldn't. It's literally, it's an impossibility that they are the cause of your feeling. And like, kids often like to throw out like ridiculous examples. And like, if you're saying to me that if a bus comes towards me and it's just thought, I'm not going to get hit, and it's like, no. Like, we're living in this world of the physical, and we've got this incredible intelligence to know about, like, we learn about stuff like that as kids. Like, we learn about traffic and the fact that we are not going to be able to just bounce if something hits us. And it's like, to know that just because we know this doesn't mean we are then going to not be hit by the bus coming towards us. And I remember Dave saying to me, one of his friends said, so if I'm going down on a plane and I think it's just thought, then no, your plane's going down. But the way in which you experience it will come from thought. Some people might think, I knew it was going to end like this. Some people might be terrified. Some people will be thinking about their family. Like, so even the experience of the same thing is different. So to know that there's an intelligence built in that's known how to create us, live us, breathe us, that intelligence is always available to us. But I feel like we've got so lost in the idea that we are victims of our past and circumstances. We blame other people for how we feel. We think we need things to be happy. And in that, we've kind of almost lost our power. We've felt powerless. And I feel like this is one of the most empowering things anyone can ever learn, because you suddenly realise we're literally live in this infinite potential for a new experience. So for my life, it went from one of depression, anxiety and suffering to one of so much more ease and so much more grace when I'm in that uncomfortable feeling, because I live very much as everyone else does. I think some people listen to Three Principles people and think, oh, it must be so wonderful to be you. And I'm grateful for being alive, but I get lost in the idea that things affect me all the time. But there's like a little bit in the back of you that knows it's not true.
Yeah.
You're onto the trick, and life becomes way more fun and more of a game, and rather than an endurance test. I felt before it was like a bit of an endurance thing. That's probably a terrible description of the principles, but I just think it's not in the words. And I'd always encourage anyone who's new to recognize the reason people tell stories and give metaphors is because this isn't a learning like we have in school, where you can just tick things off, like I know that, I know that, I know that. The words don't mean anything unless you hear it, and hearing it isn't just being able to repeat the words. You get a feel for it. You get a feel that that's true. And then I always encourage people, like, go away and then see for yourself. Like, don't take my word for it. Go out and look in life. Look back in your own life. Has there been times where you felt you're never going to get over something? And you have. There's times where you're never going to forgive that person, and then you've got over it. You've forgiven them. You've moved on. Like, you start to see the evidence of this thought created reality, because if anything was fixed and solid, we wouldn't be able to change our mind. But built into us is the ability to change our mind, to have new thought, to evolve, to learn, to grow. So I think that is so hopeful, because so many of the old modalities have kind of said, you know, you are a victim of your past, you're a victim of your circumstance, and you know, there's not much hope for you. But this is the most hopeful thing, because we realize this idea of a character and who we are is built from thought. It's all thought. So in the same way that you've created this, I'm not, like, for me, I'm not good enough, no one likes me, I want to be invisible, and I didn't see that as a creation. I didn't see that as ego. I didn't think I had an ego. I was so self-loathing, I didn't have an ego. But you see that all of that stuff is a thought creation. And the fact that I've been able to have completely different experiences since then shows which experience are we then? Which character am I? Am I the shy one that's not good enough? Am I the one that feels quite confident and enjoys public speaking? Am I the one that's terrified again? Am I the one that's a bit terrified about working with teenagers, but actually I can do it and then I enjoy it? Like, which version are we? You see how fluid we are. And the freedom that we can find in that is that we don't know what is possible for us given new thought, because we haven't had it yet. You know, it's like I had no idea what was going to be possible for my life, because I hadn't thought it up until that point. I'd only seen what wasn't possible. But this seems to, as we clear up the fact, you know, you cannot be affected by the outside world. And I really, again, would encourage people, play with that, see that, because you cannot be. So I think Mara said it in one of her talks, Mara Gleason, who's another teacher of this, was saying, you know, people can't crawl into your head and put a feeling there. A thing can't crawl into your head and put a feeling there. Feeling comes from thought. It's a closed loop. And the more that we see that, the more freedom we will find. When we don't see it, we will feel victimized or struggle. And again, I know often people then give extreme examples, and this has been shared in all settings, where if we're in a situation which we're in danger, or in a relationship that's abusive, like, we're not saying, well, just think it's thoughts so you're fine. We are saying that as you see this for yourself, it's amazing the insight people can have about either how to move forward, how to change things, or how to leave, or whatever they need to do. So it isn't saying that if you're in a difficult situation or a horrible situation that you think it's just thought and then you're fine. But what we are saying is that as you see that within yourself, that the reality you're living of that is created within your mind, you get more freedom and more insight into how to deal with it.
That was lovely. Thank you. Brilliantly put. So shall we see if anyone would like to ask a question or comment on anything that you've said so far? So if anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to either unmute yourself, or if you've got a camera on so I can see you, if you put your hand up, I can unmute you. And if anyone would like to either ask Jennny anything or just comment on anything or join in the conversation, please feel free to do so.
Me.
Thought you would want to say something.
You know what I'm going to say, don't you, Deb?
Yeah. If you weren't going to say it, I was going to say it for you.
When you, it's more of a comment than a question, I think. But when you were talking earlier about the when people kind of say, "Oh, it's just thinking," I'm constantly saying to these guys, that's something that really that irks me, that phrase. Just thinking.
It's just really so unhelpful.
Yeah. It really belittles it. I think you put it really, really nicely there. And I don't know if you noticed, but I was sitting there going, that's what I said. That's what I'm talking about. And Deb's laughing at me. I could see her laughing, because it is just, there's something so powerful about thought creating our experience. And you hear so many people say, oh, it's just thought. You think, no, it's not just thought. It's the whole creative experience happening through you. So thanks for pointing that out, Jennny.
I could see you bouncing up and down with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you. So I really enjoyed listening to you so far.
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
So yeah, Beck always says, it's not just thought, it's the whole freaking creative essence of the universe.
I think it's funny because I sometimes hear people say, yeah, we're going to talk about mind now, the spiritual principle. And I laugh because I'm like, okay, you kind of said that's spiritual and thought isn't in some way. I'm like, these are three universal, formless, spiritual principles. And they are descriptive words for one happening. They can't split them down to this bit's spiritual and that's not spiritual. And I hear people say like, oh, when I'm in my spiritual self, as if there's this other mode to work in. I'm like, that's interesting. And you know, when I'm in touch with mind, it's like, well, we can't be out of touch with mind because it's literally the whole experience. I think it does. I just saw a quote on Facebook today about we get so used to splitting experience into the good portion and the bad portion and the right portion and the wrong portion, where the principles is just a description of all experience, all life. all moments. And there is so much beauty in them when seen like that. And I think I didn't know that there could be beauty in sadness. You can see and appreciate grief. You can learn from anxiety. You can learn, like, in themselves, they're all just equal. Like, there isn't a wrong and bad experience, but we just misunderstand it. We misunderstand what it's telling us, and then we fear it. I think the less we fear our experience, the more open we are to seeing that it's all life. It's all learning. It's all allowed. And I think that's the thing. We're allowed to feel. We're built to feel. There isn't the wrong and the right and the good and the bad. They feel different. And there's certain ones that I have got caught up in where I'm like, I wish this could last forever. And there's other ones where it feels like it's never going to end, and then they do. But it is nice to know that we've been so used to judging our experience on its quality. And I think every single moment is a moment we can remember this power that's creating it. And as someone who was more religious, it's like in every moment you get to be reminded of God. You get to be reminded that we're in this creation. And the man, Godel, the refugee, said it so beautifully, because he was so taken with it. Because he I don't know if anyone's seen it, but he was going to become a Catholic priest, and then he had a football accident and became disabled. And apparently within that religion it says you cannot serve God if you're disabled, or something like this. And he really fell out with religion, and he was really angry with it for a few years. And then he said something came to us. I shouldn't be serving God anyway, because he had trouble to believe in it. And he said, but through this understanding, through this training, he realized that he'd been afraid of, like, this God who seemed so far away from him, so far away from human beings. But he says it in that somehow I am that God. Somehow I am part of that whole. And you can just sit, like, he just says, I'm sitting here in peace. And it's been 15 years since he became disabled. And he said, it's like suddenly God made sense. It's not something far away from us. And he wouldn't necessarily even call himself a religious man now at all. But he's trained in theosophy. He was in monasteries from 11 years old, and he really was going on to become a priest in the Catholic religion. But he said this is true for everyone. And he said, this is what's going to change South Africa. And Dave asked him, do you really think it's that simple? And he said, I don't think it's that complicated. He said, all we have to do is change our mind. He saw that one new thought is one new world, like new reality, new world, new experience. That a shift from hell to heaven is one thought away. And we'd said to him that one of Sid's quotes was that Sydney Banks is the man who uncovered this. Heaven and hell aren't places we go to after death. They're places we experience now in our mind or something. He said it better than that. And he's like, I love that. He loved that quote, because he realised he'd been to hell in his own mind. And he'd experienced heaven in his own mind. And he saw the metaphor that was intended. And he saw that it was right here, right now. In this moment, any experience is available to us. Anything is available. And we only have to look. I often use this example. Everything that's been created up until this point, if you go back 150 years, I don't think people even considered it, or if they had, it was science fiction. You know, speaking on these tiny computers, like, I think even like 70 years ago or 60 years ago, like, the computer would take up a whole room. The fact that we're sat on laptops and people are listening on their phones, like, the idea for that, the potential for this has always been there. But it's when it then occurs to us, we create. So the potential for what we've created so far is incredible, but there's infinite potential. I can't get my head around that, like, infinite potential for new experience, for new creations, for new lives, for new worlds. And then we're all sat in the middle of that. We're all sat in the middle of this creation. We're this active part in life. And I do feel like you start to see it more, like the idea of oneness. I had no idea when I was younger what that really meant. But I think this gets us that sense of like this, we're all parts of a whole. We're all parts of this divine mystery of life that I can't get my head around. And that I feel like the principles kind of gives us a little bit of a foundation, an accurate foundation to work from. And I think before I used to just work from loads of untruths, loads of superstitions and theories, and yeah, I just think this is a new foundation in not only like psychology but for humanity. Like, as this is globally recognized, I feel like I have no idea what's possible, but just seeing what's been possible in my own life and in the people that I've got to meet, I think a way more peaceful world is possible.
Yeah, it certainly feels as if that's what's opening up here. And just like the tiny amount of time that I have been around this, so much has changed, and so many more people are beginning to hear about it and talk about it. So many more conversations are opening up and ways to have this conversation. So it is immensely hopeful. So yeah, that is lovely. So I know that pretty soon that you are going to be part of an online conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? You know, what you might be sharing and what that is about, just in case anyone is interested in kind of getting loads more of this.
So I think it starts on the 27th of October and it's through to the 30th.
Look at Becky, she's nodding, you know you're right.
So it's an online conference, so it's fantastic because you don't have to leave home. You can just sit back and dip in, and there's recordings available. But I think it's either 35 or 40 speakers from all over the world speaking on different topics, from different backgrounds, different ages. It's probably one of the most diverse conferences that I've seen put together. I'm doing a talk with Samantha Hurst on redrawing potential. I can't remember the title, but it'll be awesome. It's me and Sam. It will be very open for questions, and it'll be fun because the way that we see it is the way that we both share it is so different, but we've just got this incredible friendship that has come out of understanding the principles. And like, it's funny because the first time we met was on a retreat, and then she came to quite a few events, and then about 3 years ago I saw her at another speaker's event, and I was like, "Hi Sam, how are you?" And she's like, "Oh, hi." And then afterwards we went for dinner together. She goes, "I have to tell you, I used to think you were really stuck up because you never spoke to me, and I didn't think you liked me." And I was like, "Oh really?" I was like, she goes, "Well, you're doing all these talks and stuff, and then on the breaks you didn't really socialise." I was like, "Well, the funny thing is," I said, I seem to have this confidence for speaking and giving the talks, and then on the break I still could get a bit awkward and kind of I would wait for someone maybe to come and speak to me." And she goes, "Oh, I just thought you were right stuck up." And I was like, so I love her honesty, but it's been so cool to get to know her and hear her journey. Like, she's got an incredible story of how this has changed her life. But for anyone interested, I do think it's the opportunity to hear from just world-class speakers, really diverse, amazingly priced, and you get the recording so you can catch up afterwards, and there's always opportunity live to be asking questions and stuff. So I just think it's a fantastic opportunity, if people can do it, to definitely do it.
Yeah.
So I know that Rudy and Sarah have put so much work into the planning. Like, I don't think people realise the amount of communication, and then I think with you guys helping with all the webinars, getting the speakers to give people sound bites, it's like, I know Rudy said he's always trying to learn more about social media and getting the word out there, because it seems like it's such a fantastic resource, but it's getting people to know about it. So I know he's incredibly grateful for everyone's help to to support making this a bigger event, getting as many people as possible involved.
Yeah, because I know one of the things that any money that's raised from doing this online conference is going to, Rudy would really, really like to make a documentary about the principles, you know, to get it out to more people. And I know that you and Rudy, obviously you created the 3 Principles Movies website, which has been an amazing resource. So, you know, we've been absolutely honoured to be able to help Rudy sharing this. You know, he came to visit us in the summer and we just had a blast, and he was talking about this conference and saying, you know, like, you know, oh gosh, you know, we need to get it out there. So we said, right, what can we do then? You know, how can we help? Because I just think definitely all the things that you've been talking about, how amazingly hopeful this understanding is. And I know all of us, there's Beck and Lucy and Julie and me, you know, we run a business together down here in North Devon, and all of us have had huge shifts, exactly, you know, the way that you're talking. And we are really, really keen to kind of get this out into the wide world, because it's just brilliant, it's fabulous, and it's so simple and so much fun. We just have a blast. So yeah, so if anyone is interested in the conference, I will put a link under the recording of this. I'll put this recording on YouTube in case you would like to listen back to the lovely Jennny again, and I'll put a link to that, because it's going to be amazing. And you know, you will hear Jennny is going to be there, so you hear more of what she has to say, and some amazing people, because it's really, really useful. One of the reasons we do the Lovely People webinars like this is because it's really helpful to hear the way that different people speak about this, and even the same people that speak about it differently on different days. And like you said, it's not in the words, there's something behind the words that somehow we seem to be able to hear. So has anybody got a question or a comment or anything that they would like to put to Jennny? Everybody's very quiet.
Hello.
Hi Jess.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I'm glad to make it.
Yeah, no, it was really helpful, a message you sent to me as well. I just wanted to talk a bit about that. It was like, yeah, just coming from another side of when you feel like you've done something wrong, in terms of like the lovely people and stuff like that, and how you can be like lovely as well, but then feeling like when you've done something wrong, you haven't been there for someone, or you've kind of feel like you've messed up. And how do you kind of, I feel like I need to like go back and say sorry to people and try and sort it all out. And how do you kind of like face it when you've really done something that's not nice? Yeah.
No, I think that's probably a question that many people have, but it's like almost in your question there was some of the answer, like maybe sometimes it is that there's a time for apologising or having a conversation with someone, but I think to know that we don't deliberately go out of our way to hurt people. When we're in misunderstanding, when we feel lost, we act in ways that when we come back to ourselves, we wish we hadn't. And I don't think there's anyone on the planet that's not had that experience. And I think for me, one of the videos that really impacted me on my first training was seeing prisoners in America learning about the principles and finding forgiveness for themselves and understanding that if they could have done better, they would have done better. But we cannot change what's happened. But we can have a new thought or an insight into how to move forward or how to heal relationships or build those bridges. And I think it starts with us seeing this for ourselves, because it's very easy to act out and then spend a huge amount of time judging ourselves and worrying about that. And we we stay in not in a very nice feeling, and then we're more likely to do that behaviour again because we're not feeling good. And I feel like the principles just explains how reality is being created for us moment to moment, and given thought occurring to you at times in your life, you're going to have acted in ways that you don't feel proud of now. But to know that there's something within us that cannot be broken and cannot be touched, and that's the same for every single person you've encountered in life, and that you can't create a feeling in another human being. So even it's been incredible for me to see that more and more, because you know, we work with people on both sides, and we were just working with some youth, and the lady that arranged it was saying, you know, she's got as much compassion for the victims of abuse as the people that have done the abuse, because she knows there's suffering on every side. So it feels like it doesn't letting ourselves off the hook doesn't mean that we don't take responsibility for what we've done, but it allows us to move forward in such a much healthier way. If we're just sat in judgment and guilt, then we're more likely to then do things and act out than if we start to recognise we couldn't be any different, and that you've got just as much, we've all got the same potential for love and the same potential to be horrible. It's, you know, it's within all of us. And one of my favourite stories is a guy called Bill Cummings, and I'll say it briefly, but if you have the opportunity to hear him share it, it's incredible. It's that when he was his daughter was young, she was raped, and his job then became going into prisons and speaking to prisoners about the impact on families. And it was years after it happened, he was in a prison, and afterwards one of the inmates came up to him just crying and just saying, I'm so sorry for you, and I'm so sorry for your daughter. And in that moment, Bill realised that when he'd found out what had happened to his daughter, he had the capacity to kill. He said if that person was in front of him, he would have killed him. He said, but in the same way, that prisoner who had done something, had committed one of those kind of crimes, had the capacity for love and compassion. And he saw that as human beings, we have the capacity for all. And he found so much love and forgiveness, and his whole entire work and life has been about sharing love. That's all Bill is about, really, is sharing love with people and understanding, regardless of actions, regardless of past. And, you know, there are certain things where there are consequences to our actions. But one of the things that my boyfriend Dave always says, he said, you know, he was teaching it to my niece Lou, and he said to be able to say please and thank you and I'm sorry. I've got him out of so much trouble in his life. He's done all kinds of things, but he just said take responsibility for our own feeling does allow us to be able to say sorry. And I think we're saying that for ourselves too. Like we've done the best we can. We can't be more than that. And we cannot change the past, but we can totally move forward in a different way with understanding.
What about if the future just feels like it's going to be like the past?
You know that's in thought. Like the only way we can know the future now is through thought. So we can imagine all kinds of futures, and they're terrifying sometimes. But we can't know it until we're there.
And what do you do when you feel like you've gone, like the circle, like, oh, I've been here before, and then how do you deal with
it? Like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's to know that we're all right now, and when the future does come, we'll still be all right. And like Dave will often laugh because I'm the slowest learner. He's like, oh, I've done the same thing wrong so many times if I'm a slow learner. But we can learn from it. Like, I didn't work out so well last time. Maybe I'll try something else. Like you've got access to insight. It's built into you. And your ability to bounce back and be in life is just the same as everyone else. The same, you know, I think when we spoke last week, we were speaking about this in nature. and you start to see, you know, that intelligence is what is built. We're built from it. That circle only exists in thought in your mind now.
Yeah.
And it seems compelling. You know, we made it up. It's compelling. But we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. We have no idea how we're going to show up. There's been times where I've messed up and I think, I'm never going to do that again. I'm such an idiot. And then the next time it happens, I do it again. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, next time I'm not going to do it. And I do it again. But I do feel like there's forgiveness built into this, because I see that if I could do better, I would. And I do try and learn, and I'm open to seeing different. But sometimes I do just repeat the same thing over and over again. We all do. Like even over silly things like, oh, I'm definitely going to stop eating chocolate. I know it's not good for me. And then like half an hour later, we're eating chocolate. Like until we have insight around it, we end up doing the same thing over and over again. But it's there for us. But I know that with this idea that, you know, good people and bad people, it's like we all have the capacity for all. But the more we live in understanding, I think the more we're able to, that love and compassion starts to come out more. Our understanding for ourselves, our understanding for other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was saying to Jess, because Jess is down in Devon at the moment, I was saying it's cool that all you guys are down. I didn't know quite where you were, but I thought it'd be nice to connect you. And I know you're building a little army down there, so.
Oh yeah. Well, if you're anywhere near North Devon, Jess, we're not far from Barnstable. So, what area are you in?
I'm actually like South Devon, Totnes.
Oh, well, I know there's quite a few people in that area too. So, you know, definitely if you want to have a conversation, we know people all around Devon, and you know, we do date things and all sorts of things that you would be most welcome to join in, and kind of talking about, you know, how we do things. You know, my story was I was in a very unhealthy relationship, and I brought up 3 children who really, really suffered because of things that I did. You know, mistake, you know, and I had this whole story of, oh my gosh, you know, you shouldn't have done that. And then I came across the principles and things got way better. And hey, do you know what? I've made some stupid mistakes since then. And it was only actually a few weeks ago I was having a conversation with somebody, and they pointed out to me that, you know, I had told myself the story, oh, now because you've come across this understanding, you should know better now. You shouldn't make those mistakes. And it's like, oh, whoops, I hadn't seen that was created by thought too. I hadn't seen that I had the capacity to keep making mistakes, but also, like Jennny said, to keep forgiving myself for that. You know, so we, in the same way, you know, experience still gets created the same way, even though we understand how it is. It's like when we look out and see the sun rising and the sun setting, just because we know that it's not the sun moving and the earth, it doesn't change how we experience it, but it changes the decisions we make from that. And it's like our experience, we still get sad, we still get caught up in our thinking, we still make stupid mistakes. Because, you know, but it's okay to forgive yourself again and again and again and again, as many times as you need to. It's built in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story.
That's okay. It's lovely. You know, that's kind of what it's about, isn't it? Sharing that, like Jennny said, across the board. I just don't know anybody who can't benefit from understanding how their experience is created. So,
I think, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Because I was speaking to Wendy in America, and then I got these kind of insights that were quite profound, but then it didn't seem to like filter into my, I don't know, it's just remembering it, isn't it? And and people saying you have to listen to it all the time, but I just feel overloaded. I feel like I keep on trying to like fix myself, and I think it's just like, just there's all these different things, isn't there? All these different stuff. Yeah, it's just
remember to have some fun too.
Yeah,
it's great to sit around and talk. This is one of our favorite conversations, that the four of us that run this business together, this is our absolute favorite conversation. But one thing we're really great at too is just having some fun. We go out for a walk, we go out for meals, we meet up with people, we dance, we do lots and lots and lots of fun things. And you learn that way too, because you see it then in life. It's great to talk about it, but go live life too, because it's great fun.
Yeah.
So don't forget that bit. Don't forget to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So it's been an absolute delight and pleasure, Jennny, to have you with us tonight. So thank you very, very, very much for sharing. And so I think, yeah, you can officially have your lovely people badge. I think you passed. Yeah, flying colours. Is that right, girls? Are we? Yeah.
Definitely.
Next week we have got the lovely Emma Klein coming to speak to us. Emma is from Birmingham, and she takes some groups. I know she takes some groups for single parents and things like that. So she's going to be sharing with us what, similar thing, her experience and what she's seen around this understanding. And she's quite a fun girl. So I'm sure she'll be sharing lots of stories with us about, her experiences and everything. Have we got anything else that we need to share, Beck?
I was just going to say we have our end of the month workshop on the Saturday, the 27th of October. Is that 27th? Yes.
Jennny can't make it then.
Jennny can't make it because she's on an online conference that Saturday. And if you do want to know more about the online conference that Jenny's doing, the website is realizingevents.com, and also you can connect with us on Facebook, debrasimmons.co.uk, if you want to know any of the stuff we're up to. That was all.
Yeah, so if there's anything about tonight, anyone you want to connect with, anything, please feel free to find us on Facebook, join in anything. And I'm sure Jennny is the same. If you want to know any more about what she's up to, where she is, have any conversations with her, she's not quite so stuck up as you maybe think. She's okay, is Jennny?
If anyone wants to contact me, I meant to say that it's info@freedomthinking.co.uk, or through the website freedomthinking.co.uk.
And yeah, so feel free to reach out to any of us. We're all kind of fairly approachable and not that stuck up, really. We love getting into these conversations. So thank you everybody for being here tonight, and as I said, we will be back here next Wednesday evening. And if there's anything else you want to talk to us about, please get in touch with us, and don't forget Rudy's conference. So thank you very, very much, everybody. Thank you. See you again soon.